and participate and talk about some awesome things. So I'm Lisa Piercefield with Apprizin. As Candace mentioned, Apprizin's a nonprofit organization, and as I get into the workshop, I have a couple of slides on Apprizin, and so I've been with the organization for 25 years. I just celebrated my 25th anniversary, so super excited about that. I do a lot of different things in the organization, so title's really not important. But one of my most favorite things to do is community workshops. And so I have Denise Steele with me, and she's my partner in crime. She's a community partner with Chase Bank. And today she and I are going to co-present on handling your debt and credit wisely. And so we want this to be interactive. I'm going to be sharing my screen, and we have some things to be interactive, and we'll have, if you have questions, please, I want you to feel free to ask those as we go through here, because it seems relevant, like if you're asking it at that time. So you can simply come off of mute and ask, or you're welcome to put it in the chat box. And then we'll have a couple of minutes at the end as well. So Denise, I'm going to let you take a moment and introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, as Lisa indicated, she is my partner in crime, right? So my name is Denise Steele. I am with JP Morgan Chase. I am the community engagement manager for the market. And really, this role allows me to collaborate with different organizations such as Apprizin and Dress for Success to bring these type of platforms to the market. So I've had the opportunity to join Dress for Success with Apprizin in the past. Can't wait to join you guys face to face, but I'm glad to be here today. So thank you, Lisa.
Great. Awesome. Okay, well, I am going to share my screen here. So give me just a quick second, because I don't see what I'm looking for. So sorry about that. Okay. All right. Let's see. Sorry, y'all. All right. Let me know. Yep, you should be able to see what I have going on right now. So we're all good. All right, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to start off and tell you just a little bit about Apprizin. So Apprizin is a nonprofit organization, and we have been in business since 1955. And over our 65 plus years of being in business, we have served close to 1 million, actually over 1 million people by now. We do have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. And one thing that makes us unique is that our Apprizin approach is that we offer services that many of them are free and also low cost services, but we like to do it in what we call an environment of trust and non-judgment, and being able to create that atmosphere where you can really talk about and engage with a counselor, a certified counselor, about what your financial issues are. So we do hope that through this webinar today that you are going to pick up a couple of things. One thing I do want you to know is that you are all entitled to a comprehensive session free of charge. And so a comprehensive session basically allows you to meet with a counselor. We do virtual appointments, so we can do a video chat, or if you want to call in to our phone queue, or you want to set up a phone appointment, we're available to do that at no cost to you. And so that's called our comprehensive money management session. And basically in that, we review what your goals are, look at your income, your expenses, and then help you create a customized plan of action. So steps that you and the counselor talk about to get you to where you want to be. Some of the other services that we offer, we have a debt management program. That basically is a repayment program set up to handle unsecured debts, where we combine them into a monthly payment. You pay us, and then in turn, we disperse that out to your creditors. And so some of the benefits of a debt management program, if any of you on the call find after we go through the presentation today that, hey, maybe I could benefit from that, or want to find out a little bit more about that, you can certainly give us a call and I'll share that information with you. But the convenience of having one payment, but reduced interest rates that help individuals get that debt paid off. We also offer credit health education sessions and housing counseling. We're a HUD certified housing counseling agency. We also do bankruptcy counseling for individuals who have to choose that route. And then also financial education. So just wanted you to kind of have an idea of who we are and what we do. And we've been doing it for quite a while. We are a national organization, which means that we're licensed to do business in all 50 states. We are actually located in Indianapolis. So we have a location off of Southport Road, and we've been there for a long time. So just that's a little bit of an overview about who we are. What we're expecting today for like workshop objectives. So what we really hope that you're able to better understand is to identify the types of debt and credit and understand how you can build wealth, identifying the ways in which you can, understand the cost of credit, and then really strategies for smart credit management. Okay, so here's what I want you to be thinking about. So you don't have to answer it yet, but be thinking about this because we're going to talk about it. I want you to think about exactly what is debt? Like when you think about debt, what do you envision? And then be thinking about how do we get into debt? Okay, so when we go through the next few slides, I'll ask that and then we can talk about it. All right, so I want to just kind of compare, how things have evolved, how money has evolved, credit has evolved over the years. And I thought about changing this where it says yesterday and today and thinking yesteryear. It's just amazing just when you go back and look at the history of credit and you look at the history of access to it. Just wow. You don't realize, or at least for me, I didn't really realize until I was intentional about looking at, hey, how has credit and the way we handle it changed over the years? So just kind of a quick comparison so that we can see that, I like to say back in the day, most people paid cash and they saved up their money for large purchases. So they might save their money to buy a car. And they would only borrow if it was like a dire emergency. So really, borrowing or using credit was kind of like taboo. You just didn't do that. It was unheard of. It was really more for wealthy people, who had probably a lot of assets. And also, believe it or not, credit decisions took forever. So, I can remember back when I first applied for my loan at a credit union when I was 21, and it was like, okay, you give them all the stuff manual. They take it on over the phone manually, and then you might wait, honestly, 3 days, 5 days, a week. If you had credit issues, it might be longer. And then back in the day, $8 billion of revolving debt. So if we fast forward to 2021 and we look at that in comparison, instant credit is routine. And so it's crazy because like through the pandemic, they didn't want individuals necessarily paying with cash because of, the obvious reasons. But then we had the coin shortage. So if you did pay in cash, don't expect any change back. And that to me is just like, wow, because for me personally, it's like cash in hand is easy for me to keep track of. I'm like, okay, I have a $20 bill. I spent $5 here. I spent $3 here, right? Like I can visually see it and know what I have. When we start using plastic or debit cards or actual credit cards, and we're not keeping track of it, you may not know how much you're spending until you log onto your account and see like, oh my goodness. So it's routine. Credit is routine these days. Unfortunately, we tend to spend more than we earn. And really, there aren't any guidelines on why we might borrow or use credit. So it's, it can be from financing a vacation to financing a fancy car to a vacation home. It's really endless. Credit scoring is there now. Credit scoring is a great thing because it allows instant credit. So, they can pull your credit report, check a credit score, and determine if they're going to, they being creditors, to extend credit to you. So it's very quick, like instantaneous. And then the big thing is that right now we have about $979 billion in revolving debt. So as you can see, over time, it has really changed. And the important piece is understanding, how do we navigate this and how do we navigate it wisely? So, you know, in your mind, I don't know, maybe you grew up or you've heard people say, oh, credit's terrible. And you shouldn't have credit, you know, you shouldn't have debt. And as we go through the presentation today, you know, Denise is going to share some ideas at looking at, you know, how we use credit, how it helps us build wealth, and when using credit can be a good thing. And so I hope that we walk away with some of those things today. So want to take just a quick glance, America at a glance, and look at the revolving outstanding credit, so that you can see like our use of credit and how it has really trended upwards over the past 30 years. If you look at the chart that we have here. So really kind of giving the history here, you know, back in 1990, 2000s, credit was more readily available. And then we had the recession that hit, and then credit started to trend down just a bit. And then the economy recovered, and then credit usage started trending upward. And now here we are at the end of 2020 with unsecured revolving debt around $979.5 billion. So you can see that we definitely use credit. Wanting to look at where are we with savings, because it's very important for individuals who are working towards building wealth to have an emergency account or something that you can fall back on. So an emergency savings. So kind of looking, the trends are really, it's crazy to me and maybe to Denise too, but it's a good thing. So pre-pandemic, so prior to January of 2020, the overall US savings rate, personal savings rate, was about 7.6%. In April of 2020, it jumped to 33%. And there are, if you get online and look, there are many different reasons or theories as to why personal savings jumped. What comes to mind for me immediately is that we realized that we had encountered something that we hadn't ever encountered before. The pandemic was huge. Who knew that people would be out of work? Who would have ever thought that we were closing down schools and restaurants and working from home? And so, you know, people, and then getting a stimulus check. And so having that windfall of money, and with the CARES Act and extra money for unemployment benefits and so forth, people started thinking about, wow, you know what? We don't know what is going to be happening in the future. So we're going to start putting that money aside, people paying down debt. So it's really very different compared to, you know, what you might think that it would be. But it's a good thing, and hopefully will continue to trend upwards in those savings accounts. So just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a history there. So let's talk about one of the challenge questions. So how do we get into debt? All right, so you had a few minutes to think about it. And if you don't mind and you want to come off of mute, you can share how we might get into debt. And you don't need to be shy. Anyone?
Hi,
Hello?
I'm Tia.
Hi, Tia.
I would say probably not prioritizing your financial obligations the correct way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that can happen. With somebody else? Steph, were you going to say something?
Yes, I was going to say just honestly, just living life, you can get into debt. I mean, I'm not an extravagant person by any means. You know, a lot of times you can work one or two jobs and still really not be able to afford just the cost of living to live in a decent home. So I think just living life can get you into debt. It's a poor tax, is what I call it.
Good point.
Thank you, Steph. I'd like to add to that as well. Steph, that's a great point. But how about living life without a plan, right? And a plan, a financial plan, which some may call that bad B word, a budget, but living life without a plan can also impact that. That's a great point.
Anyone else? Those are great. Right. And so to bring this, to bring this together, it can be, like Denise mentioned, not having a plan. Steph mentioned that, just life in general, right? So you have expenses, like we all have to live, right? We have to have a roof over our head. We have to have food in our stomach, have to have some utilities, maybe some prescriptions. I mean, there's a certain level of living and it doesn't have to be extravagant. So what individuals tend to do is think, I don't make enough money anyway. I'm not going to have a spending plan. I don't have enough to budget. And that's really not the case. And then to compound that, what happens is then, oh my goodness, I didn't have the spending plan where I'm setting back even a small portion of what I'm making, even if it's $5 a month. I don't have anything set back for an emergency account. And then lo and behold, I wake up one morning with a fever during a pandemic and think that I might have COVID, and I head to the emergency room because I can't breathe. Okay. Thankfully or hopefully that hasn't happened to you, but if it has, or, it's an emergency like that. Oh, and then you think, oh yeah, okay, great. I have insurance, but then you get a medical bill in. And if anybody's had to go to the emergency room, depending on what you go through there for, or what you're presenting, whatever condition that you have, I mean, you could end up with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different bills from one trip to the emergency room, because you have the hospital and the ER doctor, and you had an x-ray and somebody read it. And so what happens is it can build. And so there are different ways that we can get into debt. And so all of the points are valid, and just, being aware that some debt is unavoidable, but we can prepare ourselves in the event that we have that unexpected expense come up with that. But then there's other types of debt that help us build wealth. So we're going to cover that too. Okay, so from here, let me throw this over to Denise for a second, and I'm going to let her talk to us about building assets and what opportunities can come from that.
Right. Thank you, Lisa. So when we talk about debt, we should also look at how debt can build assets, right? Not all debt, it has a negative connotation to it, right? So when we think about debt, we think about home purchase. We think about investment properties. We think about investing maybe into a business opportunity that you've desired to do. We look at school loans. One of the biggest challenges that I hear from families and households is how school loan debt is impacting their monthly debt, transportation. So when we think about these things, we should think about it in terms of, one, not only is it debt, but it's an opportunity to build wealth, right? But we should approach all of them with, be knowledgeable, right? When we talk about a home purchase, how much house can I afford, right? Investment property, what comes along with an investment property? As a landlord, there are responsibilities that you have as a landlord. So you want to make sure that you're informed. When we talk about school loans, I have a teenager now preparing to go to college. He's in 9th grade, and I'm already finding myself looking at different scholarship opportunities for him. So we want to make sure that, we're informed when we make these decisions. All debt is not bad debt, and some debt can also be the tool needed to build additional future opportunities and assets. Lisa, is anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you made definitely some good points there. So no, I don't. Yeah, you did a great job there. So no, I'm going to hold until we advance to some of the other screens. But thank you for, pointing out again and reinforcing the fact that, some debt can build opportunities and build wealth. Because if you think about what I mentioned on one of the previous screens about the yesterday or the yesteryear, as I call it, individuals used to save money until they were able to buy a car. They didn't necessarily go out and purchase a vehicle. So by financing it. So if you think about that as it's relevant to today, if you had a job that you needed to get to, but you didn't have a car and you had to save up for it, probably what would happen is that you would either not be able to keep that job because of transportation barriers, or it would create so many hoops for you to get, to jump through to get there. And then by the time you saved your money to buy the car you wanted, the car probably already increased in price by $3,000 or $5,000, right? Especially if you're on a limited income. So thinking about, thankfully, we have access to instant credit and access to more credit than you did back in yesteryear, that buying a car now, you can see how that can help build assets because it allows you to keep that job, right? So you can pay on it with some interest, and we're going to talk about that, but it allows you to continue on and to move forward and to do better. So thanks, Denise, for covering that for us, because that really is one of the big misnomers, I think, when we deal with clients, thinking that, again, every debt's bad. And again, I don't need to go on, but school loans too. School loans can be a bad debt if, like Denise said, you don't make the right informed decision. And that's the key. For me, it's always been, as educating consumers is I'm fine with whatever decision, our clients want to make, but I just hope that they're making informed financial decisions, because that's a big deal. You can go to a school and take out all of the, take out the loan and all of that. But if you go to the wrong school, or you go for maybe the wrong thing, and there are schools out there that, are private, that are much higher. And I'm just using that as an example where you might, go through accelerated classes. I'm not trying to discourage it by any chance. I mean, education and investment in your education isn't money wasted. But you could be spending, $30,000 or $40,000 for a private school to come out and start a job at $12 an hour. And so you just, again, going back to Denise's point of those informed financial decisions. So anybody have questions about that? Does that make sense? About how you can use debt to build assets or to build credit?
Yes, it makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the types of credit and debt. There are different types, and sometimes there's so much out there, it gets a bit confusing. So just want to spend just a minute or two just to briefly go through them so we're all on the same page and we understand what we're talking about here. So there are different types of loans. We're going to start with installment loans. So an installment loan is a fixed payment that generally is the same amount over a period of time. Okay, so a car loan, a boat loan, a personal loan, a home loan in most cases. I mean, there's a variable there that it could go up and down, but something that is typically installment loans. Well, I shouldn't say typically. Installment loans can be secured or unsecured. So an installment loan that is secured would be an auto loan. And so that means if you don't make your payment and you become delinquent, they could repossess that. So it has security. Your car is the collateral, if you will, for that loan. So you don't pay it, they're going to come and get it. A mortgage loan is also a secured loan. So if you don't make your payment, you default, you could go into foreclosure. sometimes you can get a personal loan that is not necessarily a secured loan. And so that means like you might go to a finance company and put up your household items for collateral. While that's secured, don't know that it's really secured with anything of real value if, you know, the lender was going to come and take it back. Okay. So that's what an installment loan, secured, unsecured. Then I mentioned a mortgage loan. So mortgage loans are out there. Most people do take out mortgages to purchase property, and it's a great it's a great wealth building tool. And I just want to elaborate a bit on that, like how it can be. So if one of your financial goals is like, hey, you know, one day I want to own my own home, there are lots and lots of programs out there for affordable housing that helps with down payment assistance and with financing that can allow individuals to get into homes and start building assets and building wealth. The beautiful part about purchasing a home is that in most cases, depending on, you know, where you live, but in most cases, historically, over time, so let's say you buy a house for $100,000, that over a period of time, and let me say this, I apologize, I have someone who's working at my house today, and so I let him know that I was going to do a webinar, but he's mixing up something right now, so I apologize and hope you can hear me. So let's say you buy that house for $100,000, and then you make your monthly payments on it. Maybe you do improvements, maybe you don't. But over time, what happens is there's this thing called appreciation. In most cases, homes do appreciate if you do the general maintenance. So just by nature. So what happens is as it appreciates, that means it's worth more. So as you're making your payment and you're paying down the balance and the appreciation, because the market value is going up, you're building equity in your home. So that is a great tool. Buying a house is a great tool, not only to stabilize housing for yourself and payments, of course, it comes with responsibility, but certainly the benefits outweigh the responsibilities that go with it. So a mortgage is a great way for individuals to build wealth. And then as you continue, you know, to pay that and build up that equity in your home, it may be an opportunity for you to, you know, sell it and take that equity, invest in something that maybe is bigger or in a different location. So just a side note about mortgages. As far as revolving credit, so revolving credit is like a credit card. So it's something that you have an option to, let's use a credit card. So you charge on your credit card and you have the option to either pay the debt off in full when the bill comes in, or you have the option to make monthly payments. So revolving credit can be credit cards. It can be, you know, like a major Visa, MasterCard, American Express. It can also be, you know, department store cards, Lowe's, Home Depot, and also home equity loans too. So as I mentioned, with mortgage loans, building equity over time because of appreciation, what individuals can do is as they get equity in their home, if they would need to borrow against it, that's called a home equity loan. And so it can allow you to tap into the equity of your home if you need to, and won't go too deep into reasons why you should and shouldn't, but it gives you or affords you the opportunity to do that. So that's the different types of loans that are out there. So installment, mortgage loans, revolving loans. And then the thing that you're going to want to consider, Denise mentioned earlier about being informed, right? So making sure you understand what does it cost you. So you might be thinking, well, you know, I'm going to finance, I want to finance a car, and I can afford a $300 payment per month. And so you go out to the car dealership and the first question they ask you is, hey, what are you looking for today? What do you think your payment is going to be? Or what do you think you can afford? And you say, oh, $300. They're like, great, come over here. And, you know, they're showing you this car, not really talking about the price, just showing you the car and saying, hey, this is going to fit into your budget. And so then you say, great, that's good. I'm going to go in, sit down, and you do. And as you start the loan paperwork, you're looking at it and you realize that the car that you're about to buy is getting financed for 72 months. at $300 for maybe a 10 or 12% interest rate, depending on your credit rating. If you have a good credit rating, it could be lower. If you have a not so good credit rating, it could be much higher. So that Truth in Lending document is showing you what the costs are going to be for that loan. So what is this actually going to cost you? So for the amount that you're borrowing, plus then the finance charge that they being the loan, the bank, the entity that's going to extend that credit to you. And so they're going to add that together, and that calculates to be an annual percentage rate. So looking at it, and then it tells you at the end of 72 months, you're going to be paying $28,000 for a $16,000 car. So it's important to be informed, and it's important to understand a truth in lending disclosure. And truth in lending disclosures have to be given to consumers for all types of debt. And so Denise, not to put you on the spot, but Denise obviously is from a bank. And is there anything that you want to add to that so that our participants might know or need to be aware of?
Absolutely. So, Truth in Lending is actually a very important document, right? The Truth in Lending really gives you an idea of the fees that you're being charged by a particular lender, whether it's for a credit card, a car loan, or for a mortgage. So the question that I normally get asked the most is my APR, which is listed on your Truth in Lending, is higher than the actual interest rate that I'm being charged. Why is there a difference, right? So whenever you're calling to get a quote or get an estimate, and this goes right along with being informed as a consumer. So if I call a bank and say, hi, what is the interest rate on your car loan? And they tell me 5%, right? And then I ask them, well, what is the APR on that? And they tell me 5.75. So what that tells me is that they're charging me 0.75% of the dollar amount that I'm looking to borrow in fees, right? So when you're comparing one lender to the other, and raise your hand because we all should be comparing before we make a final decision. But when you're comparing which bank or credit union that you're going to go with, you want to not only consider the interest rate, but what is the APR that they're charging me? And the APR basically annualizes the fees and converts it into an interest rate to be able to compare. So if I have a lender that's charging me 5% at 5.75 APR, and I have another lender that's charging me 5%, but the APR is 6.25, right? I know that 6.25 is a whole lot of fees, and I'm going to go with the lender that's charging me 5% at 0.75 APR. I hope that makes sense. Any questions?
That was perfect. You said that a lot better and explained that a lot better and concise than I could. So thank you for that. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you did a great job there. So yes, and it is to be informed. We want to be informed, right? And so that truth in lending disclosure is something that you definitely want to look at. And I just wanted to make a point when I gave the example of like the $300 car payment. And I said it was financed for 72 months. So the longer you stretch something out, the lower the payment is. So the thing you have to be careful of in that is like when people say, hey, how much can you afford? It's really like, how much do you want to afford and for how long do you want to afford that, right? So you may not want a used car that right now you're paying $7,000 for and financing it for 72 months when it's not going to probably be worth $2,000 because cars typically depreciate. It's probably not going to be worth $2,000 in 5 years. So where are you going to be where are you going to be 72 months from now? So that's an important piece too, in looking at that, because when you look at that truth in lending, there's also there's a box that says, here is the total amount that you're going to be paying. So that's what she's talking about when you're looking at that APR. So really looking at the fees, this is the total amount. So you bought a $7,000 car at an 18% interest for 72 months, you're going to be paying back, this is just off the top of my head, $14,000 for a $7,000 vehicle. So you want to make sure, is that really a smart choice? And is that really what you want to do? So thank you for that. Okay, so let's talk then a little bit about knowing the numbers. So how much is too much? I get asked this question all the time. So the general rule of thumb is this: your debt payments, so excluding your mortgage, shouldn't exceed more than 15 to 20% of your take-home income, or what we call net income. And so what you would want to include in that is you would want to include any car loans, personal loans, student loans, minimum payments on credit cards, or any type of home equity loan that you might have if you have a house and you have a home equity loan. Okay, so those are the things that are going to go into that calculation. And that calculation we call the debt to income ratio. So how you find your debt to income ratio is a simple calculation. So what you're going to do is you're going to add up all of those payments that we just talked about and then divide them by your take-home pay. So an example would be, if I have $400 in monthly payments, let's just say it's credit card payments, and I take home $2,200 a month, I'm going to divide the $400 monthly total payments, excluding my mortgage, by my take-home pay net income, $2,200, and it's going to give me that debt to income ratio. So in this example, that debt ratio is 18%. Okay, and so what we said in the previous screen was that we wanted to make sure that we would keep that between 15 and 20%. And to be very honest with you, you want to keep it closer to a 15% than a 20%. Okay, so the debt to income ratio is key, especially not only for budgeting purposes, but if you're thinking about taking out another loan or applying for a loan, these calculations are put into place to ensure that someone doesn't overextend themselves. And I will also say this, that like when you're looking at different types of loans, or different entities or creditors that might extend loans, there are different types of loans out there. There's predatory, what I call predatory loans. So those are loans that are going to be a higher risk. So if you have a less than perfect credit score, you're a risk, like your credit score is not really good, and maybe you go to I hate to say predatory lending, but it's out there. It's a lender who basically is just capitalizing on your misfortune. You have bad credit, and so they don't care. They're going to extend it to you, make it a high interest rate, because if you default, they're charging enough in interest that they know they're going to get a portion of it back, right? So you want to stay away from that. But there are different tiers of lending. So like a credit union or Chase Bank, or a bank. So they're going to be more restrictive, meaning that protecting you, right? Like they don't, and I can't speak for Denise, she could say this better, but they don't specialize in predatory lending. They follow these guidelines, and they're, I won't say conservative, but it's based on your credit. You have finance companies who aren't quite as bad as payday lenders or predatory lenders. Kind of put payday and predatory kind of in there together, but I shouldn't say that. But they're finance companies, so they're going to charge you a little higher interest rate.
Let me just add this. Let me be very clear. JP Morgan Chase is not a predatory lender, but as Lisa indicated, they are out there. And what we find most about predatory lending is they target specific geographic areas, right? And they charge enormous fees, right? And I tell individuals, when we go back to good debt versus bad debt, right? Sometimes we have to make that decision to wait and not pay such a high cost to get that house, that car. It can wait. Work on your credit, do the work. I promise you, if you do the work, it will pay off in the end, which will result in getting a more affordable loan, a better interest rate, and less fees. So just be careful, because they are out there.
Thank you. And, and why we care and why we want consumers to be informed and to know is because it really strips vulnerable populations and populations of low to moderate income of wealth building. That's basically what it does. I mean, you know, because someone has made a mistake on their credit or has a misfortune or whatever, they target those individuals, and it really strips you of your wealth because you're paying what could be going into a savings for somebody's fees. So again, just being an informed consumer. So let's talk real quick about the cost of making minimum monthly payments on revolving credit. So let's say as you create your budget or your spending plan, and let's say that you have debt, credit card debt or some unsecured debt that you're wanting to get paid off, understand that credit cards typically set up your payment to be 3 to 4% of the balance, but actually some of them are more like intros. So if you open a new credit card, you might only be paying 1% of the balance as a minimum monthly payment. So remember, the higher the interest rate and the less you pay, the longer you have the loan. So in this example, it's just showing that it assumes that the individual is going to make a 3.5% payment of their balance. So we're just going to do one example real quick here. Let's say you buy a TV or you purchase a TV, but you finance it on a credit card. You pay $500 for the credit card, or I'm sorry, you pay $500 for the TV. The annual percentage rate is 18%. And so if you're making a minimum monthly payment over the course of the loan, you would be paying back about over the course of the minimum monthly payments until you got it paid off, you would be paying back about $251 in interest. And so that would be approximately 5.5 years. So you would be taking a $500 TV, and by putting it on a credit card and making a minimum monthly payment, it's going to take you 5.5 years to pay off the TV, and you're going to pay actually $751 for a $500 TV. So beware of minimum monthly payments. When you do the debt to income analysis and you say, oh, okay, yeah, right, I fall within that, it's not a problem. But if you're only able to make minimum monthly payments, that means it's going to take you longer to get out of debt. And you can see right here in the furniture, you know, at $2,500. So, hey, you finally get to buy your first new home and you're super excited. And, you know, Denise said sometimes it pays just to wait and maybe save up a portion of it, or maybe save up all of it over a period of time so that it's not costing you as much. The furniture, $2,500. Let's say you do the same thing. You put it on a credit card, 18% interest rate. If you do a minimum monthly payment of 3 to 4% of the balance, it's going to take you 12 years to pay off the furniture. And look at how much you're going to pay in interest, $1,751. So there's a cost for credit, right? And we just want to make sure that you are preparing your financial health and understanding, hey, this is what I need to be looking at, because I'd love to have new furniture, but you don't want to get yourself so far in debt that you can't afford, God forbid, that you have a flat tire on your car or dead battery, right? You don't want to become strapped. So in the next example here, it's just showing the impact of paying more than the minimum. So the rule of thumb that we teach our clients is that don't charge more than you can afford to pay off at the end of the month, right? And we know life happens. Life happens. Like sometimes in the cold, your battery goes dead and you didn't have anything in savings and you have access to a credit card and you charge, you know, you buy a new battery and your intent is going to be to, you know, to pay it off. If you have to do that, make sure that you are making more than the minimum monthly payment. And so it's just showing here, like the example of taking a furniture, the $2,500 at an 18% interest rate. So looking at the minimum monthly payment at $88. So if you just add $10 more onto that minimum monthly payment, you can actually go from 12 months to 12 years to 7 years of paying off that furniture. Okay, that's just by adding $10 extra. So it's the power of extra money there. Okay, so just trying to show you how paying more than a minimum monthly payment can help if you have credit card debt or you have unsecured debt. Be thinking about that. If you don't remember anything else about credit when you walk away, remember Lisa told me never just make the minimum monthly payment. Okay. There's also things such as power payment plan, where you can create a plan to pay down your debt. Like people say, okay, I have debt, I don't know what to do. Let me just say this. If you are in that position today, remember, we offer a free confidential session by phone. We would be happy to walk through that with you and talk to you about the different options. So you have a power payment plan. So it may be like, I don't know, what do I do? Have a tax refund. Do I pay this debt off? Well, it depends. Do you have money in an emergency savings account? Because you need to have something to fall back on. So we might look at suggesting a power payment plan. And basically that is just prioritizing, creating yourself a spending plan, prioritizing your spending, like saying, hey, here's my budget. I'm going to eat out, but I'm only going to do it once a month and whatever day that's going to be, right? And here's how much I'm going to spend. Maybe you look at ways to increase your income. So if you're someone who's living, someone mentioned earlier on the call that, life is, sometimes it's just you get into debt by basic living, right? You can. So if you have to look at ways to reduce expenses and it still doesn't balance, it may mean that you have to look at ways to increase income or come up with some extra funds. But when you come up with extra funds in the power payment plan, you're actually taking the extra payment and you're plugging it into one of these debts. So you're going to make just like keep a minimum monthly payment. You can do it as keeping all of one creditors at their minimum monthly payment and then taking the extra and just focusing on one. Or maybe you have $50 extra and you have 4 credit cards or 3 credit cards like on here. Actually, it's a bank, a department store card, and a car loan. And you say, okay, you know what I'm going to do in the power payment plan, I want to work on taking my extra money, which is $40 in this example, and I'm going to work on the bank card that has the lowest balance. Because mentally, we may psych ourselves up and may really get motivation by saying, hey, I had 3 debts. Now I have 2 debts. Now I have 1 debt, right? So you're motivating yourself by that progress. That's called a power payment plan. And then the idea of that is as I pay my $40 extra in this example on this loan and get it paid off, what I'm going to do is when that $500 bank card is gone, I'm going to take that $50 and I'm going to work on the next one. So I'm going to go to the department store card and I'm going to put 50 on there. And so now I'm going to actually be making a $69 payment on that $950 debt. And as I get that paid off, then I'm going to take that money and maybe I'm going to work on my car payment. So that's what a power payment plan is. Now there's another thing called debt snowball, and that's basically where you go from the low, and that's kind of it. You're going from the pay off the lowest balance and you're rolling it over to the next lowest and the next lowest. So taking that payment and paying it, rolling it forward. We call that a snowball. A debt avalanche is really where you're working from the top down. So you're saying, you know what, I'm going to tackle the debt that has the largest balance first. And you're putting all of your money there and reducing it. Now, why might you do that versus the snowball? Because if you have higher debt with a higher interest rate, you're paying more money in finance charges if you don't tackle the highest interest rate debt first. But again, there's no real definite rule on what you should do. This is where I think it's more on a personal level. What works for you? What do you want to see done? This is your spending plan and it's your financial health. And you may just have something that you charged on a credit card that you wish you wouldn't have, and you just really want it to go away. And so you're like, I don't care what it takes, I'm going to get that one paid off. Okay. And so maybe it's not a huge interest rate or a large balance. It's just the fact that you want to get it paid off, and that's fine to do that. Debt management, talked about earlier. There's debt consolidation. There's debt settlement. We really want you to be careful about debt settlement. If you're considering debt settlement for debt, please contact Verizon. Debt settlement is basically where you're paying back a portion of your debt. So you're settling it with your creditors, and you have to be careful with that because it severely impacts your credit. And at the end of the day, whatever is settled, the amount that is charged off. So example, $1,000 is what you owed. You settled it for $200. The $800 they wrote off, so you don't have to pay it. The IRS isn't as forgivable. You're going to get a 1099-C from that creditor that says, hey, we forgave $800 of your $1,000 debt. the IRS says, hey, that's $800 that is classified as taxable. And so now you have to claim that on your taxes and pay taxes on it. So know that there are tax implications with debt settlement. And you can settle your own debt. You don't need to pay a debt settlement company to do it for you. And then, of course, last but not least, a debt repayment option is bankruptcy. And that should be something that is a very, very last ditch effort. It should be the very last thing that you consider doing. There are so many negative impacts with bankruptcy. We understand life happens and there's situations where it just can't be avoided, but understand I would praise and call it the 10-year mistake, because it will severely impact your credit for many years. And it certainly can cause some roadblocks when you're building wealth there. I mentioned earlier payday lending. And so the only thing I want to say about payday lending, going back to the importance of understanding building your personal savings account. And again, maybe it's $5, maybe it's $10. If you get a stimulus check or if you get a tax refund, this is a great time to build a personal savings account for yourself and then add to it on a monthly basis. It can be minimal. It can be $5. It's just add something to it that increases it. And the reason that I'm so big on building savings is that it helps build wealth long term, and you build a behavior of contributing and saving a portion of your paycheck. So maybe you're saying, Lisa, I don't have a ton of money to save. It doesn't have to be a ton of money. Go back through your spending plan to see if there's a way you can cut something. Maybe it's cutting the cord on cable. Maybe it's dining out less. Maybe it's reducing your phone, your mobile phone, and some of the things that you have on there, just to get yourself $5 that you can put into a savings account. Because in the event that, I'll go back to the battery, cold winter, got to get to work, have a bad battery, and you don't have any money in savings, where might you go, right? Some people might go to family. But I asked this question, like, where would you go? Just curious, where would you go if you had an emergency? A battery, and you had an emergency and you needed to get to work, you needed to buy a battery, you didn't have any money, where would you go? So I'm asking, we only have like 4 minutes left. So I'm asking, just someone be brave enough to say, where might you go to get money if you didn't have it?
On the bus.
Okay, you're good. So you're thinking of alternatives. You're good. I like that. Okay, you're right. And you have that available. Let's say that, was that Steph?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say that you live out in the rural area and you don't have access to a bus, but you have to buy a battery, but you don't have money in savings. Who might you get the money from?
I may be able to get it from family members, but honestly, that could just cause a whole chain reaction of difficulty, to be quite honest, is more than likely what would happen.
You just went right into the segue I was looking for, because when I ask that question, I get the same thing. They're like, well, I'd probably go to a payday lender because I am not asking my family members, and it's like, right, true, it can be. And so thank you for stepping up. I appreciate you contributing there, because you're exactly right? Like, it can be. So we may find ourselves going to less than desirable places or people, but you're thinking, I have to get to work, like I have to have a job, I have to have a battery. So that kind of extreme emergency can force us maybe sometimes to have a cloudy vision and be like, you know what, I'm going to a payday lender. It's fine, I'm going to go there. I'm not saying you can't go there, and I'm not saying that they don't serve a purpose, right? But again, as Denise mentioned, informed. So we want to be informed. Here's what you need to know about payday lending. Proceed with caution. Understand that it's basically high interest rates for short-term loans, 7 to 14 days. In Indiana, it's 14 days that you have to pay it off. The average interest rate that you pay on a payday loan is 200 to 400%. Indiana law allows loans from $50 to $500. And the amount, or the service fee that they charge, is based on the amount. So it is 15% if you go with a low amount. And I didn't write the categories down, but it's like $50 to $150, they charge you a 15% fee. So anyway, it averages out, I mean, not averages out, it's between like $32 and $40 to have a loan with them for 14 days. So you think about that. If you borrowed, let's say $500, not that your tire would be that, but we'll pretend, or your battery, you borrowed $500 and it was that they only charge you 10%. So the more you borrow, the less fee you pay, but it's still a large fee, because if you take, well, yeah, $500, if we're going to do $500, and I think they charge, it's 10%. So basically they're charging $50 for you to borrow 500. Okay, so that means you're paying $550 back. Well, if you didn't have the $500 to begin with, how are you going to get the $500 to pay it back? Well, guess what? You may not, you may have to rewrite it. Now it's another $50. Okay, so it can be a very vicious cycle that's difficult to get out. So there are all types of payday lenders. You can probably find them on every corner in Indianapolis, Indiana. You could probably get online and type in payday lenders, and before you know it, you'll probably, and supply your email address, you probably have about 50 of them that's going to hit you up on email. So again, just things that you need to know. Proceed with caution. They're very, very expensive when you look at the APR that's being charged for such a short period of time. Indiana, we're a little bit lenient, in what you're allowed. You can have 2 payday lenders at one time, but it's not supposed to exceed 20% of your gross monthly income, and you can't have 2 loans with the same lender. So they have some stipulations on there. So just proceed with caution with payday lending. Because it can get you deeper than you want to be in there. The important piece is that we are smart. We're using the 8 rules of smart credit money management, which is basically know what you owe, spend less than you earn, pay more than the minimum payments. Remember, I said we absolutely have to do that. Look at the warning signs of financial difficulty. If you're having difficulty making your payments, or you're using one credit card to pay another, or you're getting delinquent on utility bills, or you're getting fees, those are warning signs. That means that you need to get in touch with a Prison, and we'll walk through a free session with you and help you figure out where you're at. You always want to strive to have a good credit rating, because in the long run, a better credit rating costs you less money. And at the end of the day, we're trying to build wealth. You always want to check your credit reports annually, and I will have that information up here. You can get it free. Actually, with the CARES Act until the end of April, you can get a free one every single week. Okay, so take advantage of it. It's out there and it's available for you. And you want to check it so that you are protecting yourself against identity theft. Okay, so here we go. Here are some resources for you. We're about 1 minute over, so I do apologize, but I want to give you some resources. So I've already talked about a Prison and what we do. We have free resources online. I also know, I don't have it on here, but Chase has a Chase credit journey, and I could let Denise talk about that a bit, or perhaps Denise, you could share in the chat the email address for that. You don't have to be a Chase member to have access to Chase Journey that can help you look at different scenarios on how to improve your credit score, and what, different scenarios, how it could impact your credit score for improving it. The annualcreditreport.com is the official place that you receive your free credit reports. Now, I know there are other entities out there that you can get them, and they're free, but typically you're signing up for email and you're getting spammed with lots of things. So annualcreditreport.com is where you can go to get a copy of your credit reports for free. And remember, you can do that every single week until the end of October. Until the end of April, and that may be extended. And then if you're wanting to opt out because of credit card offers, if you're getting a bunch of those, you can go to the optoutprescreen.com website. Don't tempt yourself. We probably don't need more than the one credit card, a Visa or MasterCard that you can use. There's a lot of flexibility there. And then also just I wanted to put in here, since we're still in the midst of a pandemic, there's some good information on the CFPB's website with resources, as well as the Prison. We have a plethora of resources on ours too. So last but not least, one takeaway I'm going to ask you to do and to consider is, what is your plan of action? So what steps can you take in the next 72 hours to help you reach your financial goals? And maybe it's just starting with, I need a budget, and you know where you can go to get help with creating a budget. Okay. So with that being said, I want to open it up. I apologize. I got a little off there, but some good information that I definitely wanted to share with you. But is there anything just in general that you may have questions about that you want to, talk about right now? I'm happy to answer them. And I'm also going to give you some information too. We have a Survey Monkey that would be awesome if you wouldn't mind to take a moment to fill out online. And I'm going to try to put that website in there. Yep, I have it in there. Okay. Sorry about that. How about you, Candace? Any questions?
No questions for me. I just want to encourage everyone, please help them out by doing the survey. Uprising just does great work in the community. They're a great resource, and they are always looking to, see what else they can do it better. So please help them out by doing the survey. I know we all want to ignore surveys, but they do help.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And thank you all for taking the time to join us in the workshop today. We hope that there's a nugget of information that you can take and you can apply. The most important thing is that you just understand that it doesn't matter where you're at in your financial journey, right? Like, so some people are really great and some people they're not where they want to be, and that's okay. But just make sure that you reach out to the resources that are available. And we hope to be able to come back and Denise and I present on maybe something else on understanding credit or something in the future. So thank you very, very much. We do certainly appreciate it. You're so welcome.
That was an awesome presentation. It was awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. We're great. So glad that you found it helpful. I know there was a lot of information, and yeah, you can tell that I like to talk. So thank you so much, and you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lisa.
Right.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you. You're welcome. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.